Brother Tyler, invite the brethren and guests into the lodge and leave the door open so others can join us in our little message today. Welcome to another episode of Follow Me. I'm one of your hosts, Worship Brother Will Moore from the Q Lodge number 433.
And I'm Worship Brother Wiley, member of Youth Lodge number 292.
And today we are at Decula Lodge number 433 in Decula, Georgia. And we're going to walk you all around the lodge and explain the different positions in the lodge and what you'll see in a lodge. I think this will be especially useful to our guests who have never actually been in a lodge.
Yeah, this show pretty much will basically be for the non-Mason. We don't know yet when we're going back. We don't have any idea when our Grand Master will allow us to attend lodge again. But while we're also here, you know, there's some things that we probably won't be able to do anymore, you know. So for those of you who hadn't seen the inside of a lodge room, this is basically a lodge room. We are facing what is symbolically the east, or where the head of our lodge will sit.
Correct.
Along with the two main men that he has, plus the treasurer and the secretary. So we'll go through all of these things, and as we go through them, we'll give a brief explanation of who they are and what they do and their purpose that they serve in a lodge.
You know, I think this will also help those of us that are Masons as well, who haven't seen the inside of our own lodge for a while. You know, it's been a while since we've sat in these chairs.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they're still pretty comfortable. You know,
they are.
It's still pretty good. I just don't want the job.
Currently, we're sitting in the senior deacon and the senior steward's chairs, and we'll get up and show the apron and symbol of each chair and explain, like we said, a little bit about each one. But let's get just started with our worshipful master who sits in the east at the chair. He also has, if you'll notice, there's a stack of hats there behind Worship Brother Wiley. The master is the only one in the lodge who gets to wear a hat.
And the reason why he wears a hat is to show, you know, basically a symbolic sign of authority. In old English times, the word worshipful master is deemed as a very honorable term.
Well, I mean venerable.
Yes, venerable, honorable, along those same lines. He is the tools of his office, you know, is the square, and he also carries a gavel. The gavel is used in a lodge to direct the brethren how to respond. So if he raps the gavel, we're going to shut up and we don't talk anymore. But understand that at any time, if an event's happening in the lodge and there's a heated discussion at any time, if you don't want to hear any more discussion, he bangs the gavel. It's over. What people need to understand is the worshipful master, he has the absolute authority until his successor is elected every year in the lodge. Same way with our Grand Master. Grand Master's office works virtually or basically the same way. He is the absolute authority of Masonry in Georgia. And in a lodge, the worshipful master is the absolute authority in a lodge.
Correct.
Now, you know, we do things very democratically here, and I'm not trying to use it as a political statement, but every brother has his right to be heard, and usually, you know, if the worship master doesn't want to hear it, he don't have to hear it. Fact. So he is the guy. It starts and stops right here with him.
That's right. And where Worship Brother Forrester is sitting is the senior steward.
And the job of the senior steward, along with his buddy that we'll talk about in a little bit, his job's to see that all our candidates are prepared, to see that the preparation room is in suitable array for degree conferral and our rituals. Also to assist the junior warden. The junior warden, who we'll talk about momentarily, he's got to have these brothers to help him. So most junior wardens can't do the job by himself, and so we do that because they tend to us during refreshment, meaning if we're having an event here at our lodges or dinner on our meeting nights or something, usually the stewards are the ones that assist him in the duties and discharge of his office. Over where Worship Brother Will's sitting is the senior deacon, the worshipful master's right-hand man. when it comes to the operations of a lodge. In a lodge, if your senior deacon is extremely well versed, he's always punctual and early. The senior deacon greets every person who walks through the door.
And he ensures that every person is a Mason.
Correct. And the one thing for me personally, and where's Brother Will, you can chime in any time.
You know I will.
But if you got a worshipful master who is maybe not as strong in some cases, and he's got a good senior deacon, his year will still be phenomenal.
Absolutely. You know, and the worshipful master actually chooses the senior deacon. It is one of the chairs that he gets to choose. The chairs down here on the floor area are appointed.
And there's never a guarantee that if you were sitting, say where's Brother Will sitting now, there's not a guarantee that he'll go to the next station come elections, because there's no office in a lodge that is guaranteed.
No,
in Georgia, our officer alignment and the way our lodge is set up, it could be different in another state, where obviously I've seen them differently arranged. The holy altar will sit in the middle of where in some lodges the holy altar is right here in front of the worshipful master.
Right.
Because his number one job is to protect those and the charter at all times. Those are his main jobs. And the charter, for those who don't know, is what gives us, it's like our operating permit.
Yep.
You know, it tells us that we can conduct lodges and lodge business under the umbrella of the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of Georgia.
And under that charter, it only gives us one power.
Yes.
What is that power?
That is to make Masons.
To make Masons. Over here we have the treasurer. His symbol is a set of keys crossed over each other. He holds the keys to the money. He has to keep track of those things, keeps in touch with the bank, knows what bills come in and out. Now those bills aren't paid without permission of the lodge and the consent of the worshipful master.
Next we'll talk about the senior deacon. The senior deacon is the messenger for the worshipful master. He does a lot of walking into his lodge. His principal symbols are the square and the compass with the sun in the center. The sun, there's a lot of symbolic meanings to this, but one of them is that he sits in the east. He's on the lower level of the lodge, but still on the level. His job is to always handle the sacred law. His job is to welcome and provide for examination of all visiting brethren. And most of all, his job is to carry those messages from the worshipful master and to any person throughout the lodge, but more especially to the senior warden. So over here we have the senior steward's chair, and his is the cornucopia. Now, people say all the time that, well, what's the difference? Well, one's facing left, one's facing right. This guy, again, we talked about him being the one of the people who always help with the seniors, with the junior deacon or junior warden. The junior warden, being the third principal officer of the lodge, he's got to have these two guys to help him do what they do.
Here we have the secretary's chair, and the symbol of his office is two crossed quills. You know, when you write down meeting notes, you have to have something to write with. Back in the day, it was a quill. We could put two pins on there and cross them if we wanted to. But his principal job is to keep a record of what happens in the lodge. Any votes that happen, any decisions that are made, any general discussions that are had, that are proper to be written, he is to keep a note of. He keeps a note of when we start lodge, when we stop lodge. He keeps a note of the officers that are here or anyone filling in their stations in their absence. So his job is very important. The secretary in most lodges will be there for years. It is a job that I've had shortly after I was raised, and it's a very tough job, but it is a very rewarding job. So remember your secretaries, and by the way, we said this before, in one of our previous episodes, the secretary does not run the lodge, contrary to popular belief. Here we have the third highest office in a lodge. This is the station of the junior warden. By the way, the pictures in the background that you see, those are pictures of our past masters here at Tequila Lodge. This lodge was founded in 1900, and we have that past master's picture on this wall as well. The symbol of the station of the junior warden is the plum. The plumb admonishes us to be upright in our several stations before God and man. The junior warden keeps us upright during our refreshments, during our breaks. He makes sure that everyone is on point and on guard. He's also, here in Georgia Lodges, he is in charge of dinner. So he ensures, with the help of the stewards, that our meals are prepared and that everyone is covered during those meal times. The junior warden is also the sergeant at arms. If there were a Masonic trial, the junior warden would bring forth charges. He would be the prosecutor in that trial. That's the reason, the JW on the stone here for junior warden, and you can see the plum as his symbol.
Well, in our lodges here in Georgia, there's this thing that sits in the center of the room, in all of them. You know, we got 397 lodges, I think, now in Georgia, or 96, the number I'm not real sure of, but that's a close number. Right. In every one of these lodges, there's something similar to this that's set here, and this is called our holy altar.
One of the most important pieces of furniture in the lodge.
Atop our holy altar, whether you be in a Jewish lodge or Anglo lodge, whatever, there's a volume of sacred law that is always on the holy altar. No meeting can begin without it being opened. No meeting can be closed without it being properly closed. If you see arranged around this thing, there are tapers. And they're arranged in a certain particular form for us in Georgia. But what they do is it teaches us lessons. When we are here during our ritual, there are lessons taught here that carry us through our lifetime. You know, each thing has a specific meaning and a specific symbol to what it's supposed to mean to you.
And a lot of times in Georgia lodges, you will see the Holy Bible will be the volume of sacred law on our altar. Mm-hmm. Now, we have a second volume of sacred law on our altar because we have Jewish brethren in our lodge. They wanted to take their obligations on their Bible, on their volume of sacred law. So that's why you see a second volume up here. There could be any number of sacred volumes on an altar. Each lodge is a little different. But it doesn't matter which volume is there. It just has to be a volume of sacred law there.
And the key is, as we talked about in previous episodes and things that we have done, you have to believe in one supreme being and some revelation of his will, or the immortality of the soul. So with those things, no lodge may function without this.
If those are not there, we cannot open lodge.
Correct. And we did talk about that in other states and other jurisdictions. The altar would be up here closer to the worshipful master. The worshipful master takes a specific obligation that he will never lose sight of the three great lights of Freemasonry, and they're placed upon this holy altar for him to never let it obscure or that light ever go away.
You know, one of the things we're doing right now during this episode is we're standing in one of the places where during a lodge meeting we can't stand.
Yeah, because we can't block his view of this ever.
Right. So we cannot stand between the volume of sacred law and the worshipful master. So that's just one of the little tidbits that if you're a Mason, you'll understand. If you're not a Mason,
here to the left of the senior warden, we have the chaplain. The chaplain is to offer up prayer to the deity for us before the meeting is officially open. He's there to perform all those solemn services that we must, as human beings, render to our infinite Creator.
Now we'll talk about the Tyler's position. Symbolically, he has a chair inside the lodge to sit in, but normally his position is outside the door. He's outside the door to keep folks out that don't belong inside the lodge. He's there to make sure that those that come up should be allowed in, and he also makes sure that when the door is knocked upon, he knows who he's presenting to the lodge for admittance. Now, no one can be admitted without the permission of the worshipful master. The badge of his office is a sword. badge of his office is an implement that he could use to ward off those cowens and eavesdroppers or anyone who wanted to try to get into the lodge. Symbolically, it's a sword. Does he have one? Absolutely. He does have one. Now, is he going to use this in particular to keep someone out of the lodge? Maybe. Can he use something else? Absolutely. But it's just there to let him know that he has the position of authority to keep those outside the door that belong outside.
We're going to talk about the junior deacon. He sits to the right of the senior warden. His badge of his office is the square and compass, and it has the moon inside instead of the sun, which symbolizes that he sits in the west because that's at the close of the day, the moon comes out. It's also his principal job is to guard this door to make sure no one comes in. Okay? And once he does that, he's also the chief messenger for the senior warden to the worshipful master and anywhere else he needs to be sent.
Over here we have the junior steward. His duty is to help the senior steward and the junior warden in the duties of his office. He also has the cornucopia, which means that he and the senior steward help keep a bounty within the lodge and make sure that everyone is satisfied.
He is also the lowest man on the officer line.
He is. This is usually where a Mason will start his journey through the chairs.
Correct.
And we call it a journey or a travel through the chairs because as you get in each one and move up, you learn more and more. Starting with this position, you go from the junior, if you succeed in the next chair, if you're appointed, and then elected, it goes from the junior steward to the senior steward. The senior steward to the junior deacon. The junior deacon to the senior deacon. After the senior deacon, now we come into the elected officers in the lodge, which are the junior warden, the senior warden, which we'll discuss here in a moment, and then the worshipful master, where you end your journey and become a past master after that year.
Well, then you become that, you finish up with that lifetime servitude then at past master status.
And once you're a master or a past master, you're then a member of the Grand Lodge. The final station we want to talk about today, by no means is this the final station, but our senior warden. That's what the SW stands for. And the symbol of his position is the level.
Now with the level, we must all remember that we're traveling upon that level of time. Peace and harmony being his number one job. It's his job to keep the peace and harmony, and it must prevail in a Masonic lodge. He is the number 2 man in a lodge. If the worshipful master has to be out due to health reasons or business reasons, it is his job to open and close, conduct the business of the lodge, because he is the second in command.
Right.
In December, usually the senior warden does get elected to worshipful master, but there again, there is no guarantee. You could have spent 7 years in the chairs and make it to this chair and not be elected to the east of the lodge.
And I've seen it happen. And also, if a brother is going through the chairs and he knows that he's not going to be able to fulfill the commitment of a chair, he has the option to bow out or step down.
Yes.
Any officer in a lodge also has the ability to step down during his year. Some offices take Grand Master approval to do that kind of thing, but there are abilities by the brethren to step down if they need to, if life gets on, because we're taught as Masons that the lodge should never come in front of our duties to our God, our country, our neighbors, our family, or ourselves.
Now, one interesting point about the senior warden, we talked about the senior deacon and his importance to checking credentials. Well, this man here has to reassure the worshipful master that all the credentials have been checked and that everybody is qualified to sit with us. That's his job. He's to assist the worshipful master in all of his duties. But once the senior deacon makes sure that everyone is qualified, he'll let him know everybody's qualified. That way, when the appropriate question is asked, the appropriate answer is given. If he's not satisfied, we got a protocol we have to go through with that. but understand that there's 3 principal officers in a lodge.
Junior warden, senior warden, and worshipful master. And the lodge cannot start until the worshipful master is satisfied that everyone present has the ability to sit with us in whatever degree we're opening.
That's right. And as long as that's the situation of our lodges are set due east to west. Symbolically. With the worshipful master sits in the east because the sun always rises in the east. And his number 2 man's got to be on the backside at the close of the day in the west. And then, of course, the junior warden, he sits in the south because the sun's always at its meridian height at high 12 or noon each day. So he's to govern, make sure that we don't get out of line. Remember, we talked about him being the sergeant at arms in a lodge. So those 3 guys carry on a huge amount of responsibility, but so do the appointed officers in the lodge as well. So that's our take on being.
So one other thing I wanted to discuss, when we open our podcast, we talk about, Brother Tyler, leave the door open so that our guests can enter. This is the door we're discussing leaving open. During a meeting, the Tyler, who sits outside to guard the door and guard our proceedings, he ensures that this door stays closed. Because we wanted to open this up to Masons and non-Masons alike, we've symbolically said, let's leave this door open and let those join us. We're not doing anything tiled in our podcast, but we think it's kind of neat to have that in there just because it symbolically means something to us as Masons.
Correct.
But I wanted to explain that to those out there who don't really understand our opening. It just throws a little meaning in there for us. And that's why we say, Brother Tyler, please leave the door open and let those that want to join us. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we bid you adieu. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Follow Me. I, again, am Worship Brother Will Moore from Decula Lodge, and as you can see, I'm wearing my Decula shirt today.
And I'm Worship Brother Wiley Forrest, and I'm from Buford Lodge number 292, and I like to wear my Masonic education shirts because, again, this is all about the education.
It is. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, yeah.
I almost forgot. Be excellent to each other. Good night.